Number one, empathy, which means understanding and sharing in the plight of the people. Number two, methodology, which indicates a systematic approach to deploying tools from the reform toolbox to cushion the biting effects of reforms. Number three, transparency, which mandates governments to act openly and to carry the citizens along at every major decision point in the reform journey. And number four, responsibility, which requires leaders to take the lead in bearing the difficult and painful impacts of reforms. I leave it to the consciousness of Nigerians and to the consciences of those in this administration entrusted with the fate of hundreds of millions of Nigerians to determine whether the President Tinubu-led government has sufficiently demonstrated these four essentials. However, while this address does not overlook political rascality as a contributing factor as far as the difficulties of economic reforms are concerned, the purpose of this address is not to condemn, but to guide. It is not to blame, but to admonish. It is not to dismiss ongoing efforts to stabilize the economy, but to offer an alternative path to show how we can reimagine Nigeria and put an end to the sufferings of the Nigerian people. Let me also state that this is not to dismiss the successes already achieved by this government, including the increase in reserves by this administration from $35 billion in May 2023 when this government came to power to $40 billion as of November 2024. That's a place to clap. While acknowledging these and similar reform efforts, this address is meant to highlight the injustices at the root of our problems and to lay a foundation for an economic recovery speed that will dwarf that of Japan after the Second World War. To do this, my intention is to point this administration to the governance model of Joseph as recorded in Genesis chapters 41 to 47, revisiting the governance model of Joseph. Albert Einstein is often quoted as saying, the definition of genius is taking the complex and making it simple. The state of our nation today warrants visiting a leader who simplified the complex socio-economic problems of his country of residence and turned that country into the world's economic capital. The two enigmatic dreams which Joseph interpreted for Pharaoh were a predictive model of a boom and bust cycle characterized by 7 years of economic surplus, subsequently replaced by 7 years of famine. Empowered by the king to administer the policy, Joseph enacted and effected notable fiscal and monetary policies in the boom period as well as in the bust period. The governance model of Joseph not only preserved Egypt during a global recession, it also transformed the country into the greatest economic power of that age and enabled an African nation to sustain the then known world during a severe economic downturn. In the boom period, all across the country that is Egypt, Joseph created, listen carefully, locally managed networks of cities, industries, and reserves with adjoining farmland. During the recession that succeeded the boom period, as national economics faltered, Joseph opened up the reserves and sold to the Egyptians within their own region rather than putting them on the dole, meaning that despite the fact that there was a crisis, the people exchanged value for the supplies. Furthermore, while implementing his economic policies, Joseph facilitated a healing and reconciliation program that will see him reunite with his brothers who had betrayed and sold him into slavery. By so doing, he situated his policies and programs against the backdrop of national reconciliation and reintegration. However, as the recession climaxed, even though the results were in surplus, the purchasing power of the people diminished to the extent that they bartered property and liberty for sustenance. But rather than printing money and giving cash gifts to the people, Joseph embarked on value reforms and structural re-engineering. The vulnerable condition of the people gave the state newfound powers, which Joseph deployed to achieve the four main landmarks of what I now call the cutting-edge nation. Number one, the creation of a new value system characterized by, among other features, patriotism and diligence. Number two, the re-engineering of the national structure to consolidate the networks of cities, industries, and reserves across the country with emphasis on geo-economic productivity. Number three, the institutionalization of a culture of prudence in public-private financial management on a tripod of savings, taxation, and investments. And number four, the promulgation of a new legal or constitutional order based on the express consent of the people to be so governed. I've described to you the restructuring of Nigeria, which must take place sooner than later. Having laid this background, I will now show you the journey of Nigeria in the light of the governance model of Joseph. I will do so from the privileged view of the mountaintop where my journey as a nation builder commenced. Nigeria and the two seasons of plenty. On April 10, 1967, as a 13-year-old boy in Abeokuta, I had a life-transforming dream that etched in me an unquestionable passion for Nigeria. In that dream, I saw myself seated on a mountaintop with two of Nigeria's notable leaders, General Yakubu Gowon, who was head of state at the time, and Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who would later become the leader of government business. In that dream, I was in between these two leaders, one a military leader and the other a civilian politician, as we overlooked Nigeria and had conversations about the future of the country. I was only 13 years old. Like the unveiling of a parable, I will now proceed to draw a connection between the history and future of Nigeria through the lens of my dream as a 13-year-old. Nigeria has experienced two major seasons of oil-induced economic booms, one during a military regime led by a northerner, and the other during a civilian administration led by a southerner. The first boom began in 1973 under the government of General Yakubu Gowon, a northerner. So significant was that boom that General Yakubu Gowon was credited with stating, "Money is not Nigeria's problem, but how to spend it." The second major oil-induced economic boom occurred during the civilian administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, a southerner. That era gave us the highest post-Civil War gross domestic product (GDP) growth ever recorded, a historic debt forgiveness deal, a significant rise in foreign reserves from $3.7 billion to $45 billion and $25 billion saved in the excess crude account. Unfortunately, because we failed to sustainably manage our years of plenty, the pandemic and its attendant global economic crisis met us with dwindling national reserves, a staggering debt burden, and insufficient capacity to withstand the shock. It's also uncanny, listen attentively, It's also uncanny that when each of these areas of boom ended with economic collapse, first in 1984 and then in 2015, Muhammadu Buhari had the unenviable job of presiding over the complexities of the Nigerian economy, first as a military dictator and then as a politician and civilian president. This is the complexity that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has inherited and has the onerous task of redeeming. Like Pharaoh, the government of President Bola Tinubu needs redemptive solutions, so that require nothing short of the genius executed in the governance model of Joseph. How would we do this? We would do this by locating our national reserves. Please pay attention. Say with me, national reserves. I can't hear you. Where are they? It is clear that reforms have become much more difficult and painful because we have taken too long to act. However, even in this current state of despair, we can still reverse the trend by adopting the Joseph model. Whereas the biblical Joseph activated futuristic reserves for future deployment, we can activate existing reserves for present deployment with the promise of future returns. Now, this does not suggest that we have sufficient financial or full reserves to meet current needs. Instead, it requires us to ask salient questions, such as, where are all the monies that are accrued to Nigeria during those years of boom? We may not have reserved them in national, regional, or local storehouses as Joseph did, but I'm persuaded that the proceeds from those years of boom did not vanish into thin air. Real wealth is not destroyed. It simply grows wings and relocates. We may have lost track of these proceeds, but I believe our seemingly lost wealth is currently domiciled in at least 3 locations. You want to know them? Number 1, capital flight destinations. Number 2, capitalists in our nation. And number 3, corrupt public officials. The first reserve includes cross-border accounts and investment destinations fed by capital flight in the form of illicit financial flows, tax evasion, and the repatriation of funds by foreign investors who have lost confidence in the Nigerian economy. A 2021 report by the Political Economy Research Institute estimates that Nigeria has lost around $467 billion to capital flight from 1970 to 2018 alone. That's over 12 times our current reserves of 38 billion, and in today's naira value, it will amount to over 745 trillion naira, or over 13 times the current budget of 54.99 trillion. The second reserve are the capitalists who benefited from past errors. This can be seen from a 2024 report by Oxfam that the combined wealth of Nigeria's 5 richest men could end extreme poverty at the national level, even as the amount of money that the richest Nigerian man can earn annually from his wealth is sufficient to leave 2 million people out of poverty for 1 year. It is commendable that since the time of that report, some of these wealthy Nigerians have invested significantly in the Nigerian economy. This address aims to show how we can attract more of such investment in ways that accelerate economic recovery, boost growth, and create opportunities for every Nigerian. The third reserve, where the resources that are accrued from our boom years have been domiciled, are the corrupt officials who have appropriated our commonwealth. According to the same Oxfam report, between 1960 and 2005, about $20 trillion was stolen from the Nigerian treasury by public office holders. This amount is larger than the GDP of the United States in 2012, about $18 trillion. It's also over 700 times our current reserves. Little wonder Nigeria is where it is today. So how do we open up our national reserves? You like to know? Having identified 3 reserves, including capital flight destinations, capitalists, and the corrupt, I believe that this moment of national crisis presents a rare opportunity for a strategic deployment of this accumulated wealth. Although, unlike Joseph, we fail to strategically and sustainably accumulate our national, regional, and local reserves for the broader public good, I believe these 3 reserves can be opened up through an emergency reset of our polity inspired by his governance model. As Joseph did in a time of crisis, we must open up these 3 reserves in service of the people. Now, please listen attentively. Let me state, however, that I'm not advocating for the nationalization and redistribution of private wealth. Far from it. That will only set us back. While illicitly accumulated wealth can be taken over by the state under due process of law, the right to legitimate private property is sacrosanct and must not be violated. Instead, I propose innovative financing rooted in a structural reset. Such a structural reset must be founded on key principles that I have highlighted on previous occasions, most recently at the University of Lagos Business School, ULBS, including the fact that national wealth can be mobilized through a compelling national vision and a bankable national business model to achieve remarkable progress. Also critical is the fact that economic confidence cannot be achieved in a climate of political rascality, social injustice, and leadership irresponsibility. In the light of these principles, the President Bola Tinubu would do well to review his team dispassionately and seek out Joseph-type leaders, persons of impeccable integrity and excellent skills, reputed for transparency and accountability, able to mobilize and administer human and material resources, and to convincingly articulate a bankable model for Nigeria in 2030. It is worthy of note that such persons are currently being told that they cannot be here, implying that the current governance model cannot accommodate the people Nigeria needs at this time. Such persons should be identified and mandated to drive a coordinated program towards steering Nigeria out of the current crisis. They should be empowered to coordinate nationwide survival interventions, stabilize the economy, re-engineer our debt profile, facilitate structural reforms for geo-economic industrialization, spur inclusive economic growth and development, and build an economy that is fit for the 21st century and beyond upon the foundations of national reconciliation and values-driven national rebirth. To execute this mandate, these visionary leaders should oversee the establishment of what I call the Consolidated Value Investment and Development Fund, COVID Fund. When the pandemic brought the economy to a halt, a situation we are yet to recover from 5 years after, this fund, which I will now simply call the fund, is not based on volatile factors such as the price of oil. It rejects the logic that Nigeria must be trapped between the rock of loans or handouts and the hard place of solely extractive economy. Instead, it draws its strength from a bold and credible vision for a new Nigeria, one built on strong, trustworthy, and innovative leadership, the unmatched dynamism and resourcefulness of the Nigerian people, long-term structural transformation, and a bankable business model investors can trust.